What is up guys, Delboy here. I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time actually. I have mentioned it in the past, but I've not really spoken about it in any real detail. And the subject I want to talk about or share my opinion on is women's boxing, what I think of it. For me, I've got to be honest, I've never enjoyed women's boxing. From the very first time I saw it, I knew it wasn't for me, and my opinion on it hasn't changed whatsoever. The first time I really kind of became aware of women's boxing to any great extent was on the Scandinavian and German cards. These cards were usually promoted by Sauerland, and on a lot of these cards there would always be a women's fight. And way back when I first saw this, the first thought that entered my mind was the fact that this was a very cheap way of filling out an undercard. And that was my very first thought back in the day, apart from me not liking the quality of it and whatnot. So way back when I never used to enjoy women's boxing, and you know, in recent years it has been implemented in the UK and the United States. Now I recall a few years ago, and it wasn't that long ago, Frank Warren said he had no interest in signing a female boxer. 12 months later, he signs Nicola Adams. And Eddie Hearn also, I believe at one stage, he said he wasn't really interested in female boxing, but again, signs Katie Taylor, and she seems to be on every bloody card these days. To me, female boxing just seems to be a good way of TV stations or promoters ticking a politically correct box, you know, and it is also a way of stacking undercards on the cheap. How many times have you seen Eddie Hearn say, oh, stacked undercard, world title fights on the undercard, and one of the world title fights is Katie Taylor? I'm not being funny, but when I watch boxing in real life with people, every single time Katie Taylor comes on, everyone moans and groans, and people who I watch boxing with just don't get into it. That's my experience. And these are casuals, and they don't enjoy it. It seems very forced, and like I said, to me, it is a cheap way of filling out the card. I'll give you an example. What would you rather have? So next week we have Carl Frampton versus Josh Warrington. And on the undercard, we have a really good British title fight between Liam Williams and Mark Heffron. That is a really good fight. Would you rather have Liam Williams versus Mark Heffron or a Nicola Adams world title fight? What would you rather have? I know what 99% of people would rather have. And, you know, when you put a woman's title fight on the card, to me, it always just dilutes the quality of the actual card itself. You know, never adds anything to the card. It really doesn't. The quality of women's boxing is poor. And the fighters at the top, you know, the elite level world champions, when they defend their belts, all of these fights are always one-sided for the most part. Always mismatches and, you know, boring. I just don't want to see it. It just doesn't sit right with me. I don't enjoy it. And all of the people I watch boxing with, and they are all casual fans, do not enjoy women's boxing, and I can truly say that, and that you can take it for what it is. You can take my word for it, or you can think I'm lying, but they don't enjoy women's boxing whatsoever, and I believe a lot of people are the same way. I think it's very forced. Women's boxing hasn't grown naturally. It's just a whim. It's a gimmick. That's what it is. It's a gimmick. It's a way to tick the PR box. And, you know, it's a cheap way to stack an undercard. If women's boxing is this big market Eddie Hearn is talking about, then why not book an arena and have a card of purely women fighting and see what happens? See how many tickets get sold. Better yet, why not have an all-women's pay-per-view card? Katie Taylor always seems to find her way on pay-per-view cards. Women's MMA does well on pay-per-view. If women's boxing is this huge market, again, make an all-women's pay-per-view card. See what happens. Let's see how big women's boxing really is. There's a reason Katie Taylor hasn't headlined in Ireland yet. Do you guys remember when Katie Taylor first signed with Eddie Hearn? Do you remember what he said? He said Katie Taylor is going to be selling out stadiums in Ireland. It's not happened yet. Why do you think that is? Because it wouldn't work out. If Eddie Hearn could get a stadium fight out of Katie Taylor, he would have done it already. But, you know, she clearly isn't that much of a draw. There's a reason Katie Taylor fights early on in the undercard on pay-per-view events. There's a reason Katie Taylor fights on undercards in the US. She isn't a big draw. And the reality is, from my experience anyway, I watch boxing, like I said, with quite a few people in real life. And I don't know anybody in person who enjoys female boxing. And a lot of people I speak to online kind of feel the same way. And I'm sure there's going to be a couple. But for you PC principals out there, listen, I'm not saying women cannot box. I'm not saying they shouldn't have a right to box. But all I'm saying is I don't enjoy it. And, you know, don't force it upon us. If women's boxing is going to grow, it will grow naturally. The more you try and force it on people, the more people will reject it essentially, and that is natural. All I ask for is the powers that be to stop forcing it on us, you know? If you really want to try and push female boxing, why not have 2 or 3 all-female cards a year at York Hall and put it on regular Sky Sports? Then at least we get the choice to actually support it or not. Because when women are chucked on undercards of men's fights, how can you actually gauge if the sport is growing or not? Really? Why not have these women sell tickets, see what numbers they can do on regular Sky Sports, see what numbers they can do at York Hall, and go from there? And have these cards separate. At least give us the choice if we want to support this product or not. That is all I ask. If you enjoy female boxing, you know, that's fair enough. I'm sure there's some people who watch this channel who enjoy female boxing, and more power to you. But, you know, it's not for everyone, and I think people need to acknowledge that and just be realistic about that, to be quite honest. No disrespect intended, but that's just my honest opinion on female boxing. Share your thoughts below. Peace.